The Indian fled from his skin to the depths of ancient immensity, from which he rose one day like the islands, defeated. He turned into invisible atmosphere, kept expanding in the earth, pouring his secret sign over the land. He who spent the moon and combed the world's mysterious solitude, he who didn't transpire without rising up in lofty air-crowned stones, he who endured like celestial light beneath his forest's magnitude, was suddenly worn threadbare, transformed into wrinkles, his torrential towers demolished, and he received his pile of rags. I saw him in Amatitlan's magnetized heights, gnawing the shores of impenetrable water. One day I walked in the Bolivian Altiplano's stunning majesty, with its remains of bird and root.
I saw Alberti, my brother of possessed poetry, weep in the Araucanian precincts when they surrounded him like Ursula, and instead of those red gods, they were a purple chain of corpses. Further beyond, in Tierra del Fuego's network of wild waters, I saw them clambering, O squalid sea-dogs, into their battered canoes to beg for bread on the ocean. They systematically murdered every fiber of those deserted domains, and the hunter of Indians received filthy bounty for bringing back the heads of those masters of the air, kings of the snow Antarctic solitude.
Those who paid for crimes sit today in Parliament, licensing their marriages and presidencies, living with cardinals and managers, and flowers grow above the severed throated of the masters of the South. Then Arcania's crests were dissipated by wine, ravaged in taverns, blackened by lawyers, at the service of that kingdom's theft. And those who shot them down, those who entered firing and negotiating on the roads defended by the dazzling gladiator of our seashores, were called pacifiers, and their epaulettes were multiplied. The collapse of the Indian's heritage was so invisible that he lost without seeing. He didn't see the banners, he didn't send his bloody arrow flying. So he was gnawed bit by judges, by pickpockets, and by landowners. All took his imperial sweetness. All entangled him in his blanket, until they threw him bleeding into America's uttermost swamps.
From the green sheets, from the foliage's pure and innumerable sky, from the immortal dwelling made of heavy granite petals, he was led to the dilapidated shack, to the arid dung heap of misery. From his gleaming nakedness, his golden breast, and his pale wrists, or from the mineral ornaments that joined his skin to all ado, they led him by the threads of his rags, and gave him lifeless pants. And that's how His Majesty came to parade through the air of the world that was once his. That's how this torment was committed. The deed was invisible like a traitor's entry, like impalpable cancer. Until our father was overwhelmed, they taught him to be a phantom, and then he opened the door to him, the door of the other poor, that of the entire earth's downtrodden.
What's good, guys? Today we're actually going to be doing a poetry speedrun. And today we actually have one of our special guests. He's actually a poem writer himself. It's Arjun Patel. And I guess I would start off with my brilliant analysis as a noob, but I guess we'll get into it. Oh, and thank you for the follow, Isaac. All right, so this is The Indians by Pablo Neruda, and I guess I'm just going to go straight into it. So, the Indian fled from his skin to the depths of ancient immensity. Well, when he uses words like fled and solitude, it honestly helps convey that the Indians were kind of like desolate after their land. all their possessions were taken away from them. And it kind of like reinforces that feeling. And since they were able to build their entire civilization and all that such on this land and this basis, it's almost like their land was their most valuable possession. And the fact that they're losing it probably means that they're losing their identity and who they are as a person. So these like words of leaving their land shows truly how much we're basically destroying the Indian culture. And I guess to move on, when it talks about pouring his secret sign over the sand or the torrential towers demolished, it's honestly helping me really understand the emotional attachment that the Indians felt for the land and the betrayal of the white settlers. It shows really how the Indians were taken advantage of and how everything was taken from them. But I guess my analysis is somewhat surface level, so I couldn't really understand, when he's talking about certain places like the Crucinian or Ursula or Tierra del Fuegos, but I think our special poem writer, Arjun Patel, can help us. So what do you think about these, Arjun?
Yeah, so Amatitlan and Tierra de Fuego are indigenous names for land. And Ursula is part of their mythology. So when Neruda sprinkles them throughout the poem, he hopes to emphasize the scope of the culture and traditions that the Native Americans have built over the years and is trying to tie that with the land. In doing so, he's able to give the Native Americans a sort of identity and hoped for us to recognize that they are human too and deserve proper treatment. Later in the poem, Neruda also disillusions the European pacifiers. They were initially praised for ending the wars, but Neruda shows that they actually led to further nonviolent suffering of Native Americans because then they were unfairly treated in land treaties and forced onto reservations. Returning to the imagery, Neruda's description of silence at the end of the poem shows why some of the acts of deprivation have gone unnoticed. Neruda wants to emphasize that the Indians lost basically the entire continent of North America, but couldn't point to one specific battle and demand reparations. They were instead slowly forced into excruciatingly losing their land and reduced into the role they have today. And finally, that last line, that of the entire Earth's downtrodden, implies that this matter of slow power creep is indicative of the manner in which civilizations and people are experience downfall, as this is able to allow problems to fester.
Wow, thank you for that brilliant analysis, Arjun. I'm glad to have you on the live on the stream. And thank you, Egomatical, for the sub. So I guess that has to be the end of the stream. So I'll tune in next week with our next poem speedrun. See you guys.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with Ryan Elson Peter. Ryan, do you have any physical possessions that you're very fond of?
Yes. I have a nice guitar that I'm very fond of.
Very nice guitar. How would you feel if you got beat up, robbed? They took the guitar, walked away with it, felt bad later that night, and came back with 3 strings.
That's worth nothing, so I'd be very, very mad.
Yes, you would be very, very mad. Okay, now for a follow-up question. How do you feel about the Native Americans on our land?
On our land?
And in the United States that are left.
I think what we did to them is not the most humane thing. And I feel that even though we give them reservations, I don't think it's enough to compensate.
Yes, you are. You're right. All right. What's up, folks? I'm here with Reshley. Reshley, do you have any personal possessions you're fond of?
My phone.
Your phone. How would you feel if you got jumped by a bunch of guys? They beat you up, stole your phone, and then they just left. But then they felt bad about it later, so they came back and they gave you your phone, but the screen's cracked, everything's broken, and it doesn't even turn on.
I'll be pissed, bro.
Yeah, you'd be pissed?
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, follow-up question. How do you feel about the Native Americans living on our land, who I guess you could figuratively say we beat up, jumped, stole their phone, and gave it back to them broken?
Oh. Yeah. Americans are kind of. Yeah.
I'm here with Zach Darker. Zach, do you have any personal possessions you're fond of?
Yes, Sally.
Sally, probably his bat. Is that your bat?
Yes, it's my baseball
It's his bat. All right. So let's say figuratively someone beat you up, stole Sally from you, then put a bunch of dents in it, ripped the wrapping off, but then gave it back to you later because they felt bad.
Nobody can beat me up. I'm Zach Darker.
But you just got jumped. There was like 5 dudes. They're all 6'4", 220 pounds. They beat you up and they took your bat. So how do you feel?
6 dudes.
6 dudes. It was 6 dudes. How would you feel?
I would buy a new bat because
he would buy a new bat. Let's say there's no bats available. Sally,
No
what's
bats
your bat?
available in the entire world.
Entire world. They just gave you Sally back. Your one beautiful bat with sentimental value.
Sad.
He would feel sad. Now, follow-up question. How do you feel about the Native Americans living on the land who we could figuratively say we beat them up with 6 dudes and then took their bat Sally and then gave it back to them after we put her full of dents and ripped off her wrapping?
So they're living on the land right now.
Yeah, because that's what we did.
And we're beating them up right now.
No, because like you know how in history we
Oh, you mean you mean 400 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, that was 400 years ago. I don't care.
And you hear to hear, folks. Interesting opinion. Please.